This is one of the most powerful and, honestly, one of the most clever stories from the entire Civil War. It's not about some huge famous battle. Nope. It's about a secret weapon for freedom. And the incredible part is, it was forged by the very people who were fighting to win it. So let's just start with a really big question. Who really freed the enslaved people during the Civil War? Now, I bet an answer immediately pops into your head. And look, that answer is part of the story, but it's not where the story begins. To really get how freedom was won, we have to look somewhere else entirely. And right here, this is the crucial point. The path to freedom? It wasn't just handed over. It was taken. This is a story all about unbelievable bravery, about people who saw a tiny window of opportunity and just burst right through it, forcing the government to catch up to them. Okay, so picture this. It's April 1861, and the Civil War just explodes onto the scene. Enslaved people? They did not sit around and wait to see what would happen. They knew right away that this was their moment. From the very start of the war, they began taking this enormous risk, escaping to Union Army camps, with the hope that on the other side of that line, they could finally be free. But here's the first roadblock. Thousands of black men tried to volunteer to actually fight for the Union, and they were turned away. Why? Well, there was this really old federal law from way back in 1792 that actually barred them from serving in the army. So the official doors to freedom, they were slammed shut, which meant they had to find another way in. And that other way, well, it all starts with just three men. Their story is one of the most important and yet one of the least known from the whole war. And what they did, it was the spark that was about to change absolutely everything. And just look at how fast this all happens. The war kicks off in April, and barely a month later, on the night of May 23rd, 1861, this huge event takes place. I mean, there was zero hesitation. The second the conflict started, these men were ready to act. And these are our heroes: Frank Baker, Shepard Mallory, and James Townsend. It is so important that we remember their names because it was their individual courage that set this whole incredible chain of events in motion. So let's trace their journey step by step. First, these men were being forced to use their skills to build a military fort for the Confederate Army. But in secret, they were planning this unbelievably risky escape. Then, under the cover of total darkness, they got in a boat and rowed it across the harbor to a massive Union base called Fort Monroe. They got there and they asked the Union Army for one thing: protection. What happened next wasn't a battle with cannons and guns. It was a battle of wits. The bold actions of these three men sparked this brilliant legal idea, a loophole really, that would pry open the first real door to freedom in the entire war. The man in charge at Fort Monroe was a Union general named Benjamin Butler. And this is critical. Butler was a lawyer. So when the Confederates came demanding their property back, Butler didn't just see three men. He saw a legal puzzle and a fantastic opportunity to use the law in a brand new way. He declared the men contraband of war. Okay, so what in the world does that mean? It's a military term. Think about it like this. If an army captures enemy cannons or wagons full of supplies, they get to keep them, right? That stuff is called contraband. Butler was about to apply that same exact idea to people. This slide just lays out the whole standoff perfectly. You've got a Confederate officer showing up, demanding the men be returned under the Fugitive Slave Act, a law that said runaway slaves had to be sent back. But Butler, with his lawyer brain, fired right back. He argued that since Virginia had left the United States, it was now a foreign enemy, and that meant these men were enemy property being used to help the war effort, so they were contraband, and he was confiscating them. It was a brilliant move. He used the Confederacy's own twisted logic that people were property right back against them. The effect was immediate, and it was enormous. Word of Butler's contraband decision spread like wildfire. Fort Monroe became known as Freedom's Fortress. By the time the war was over, more than 10,000 enslaved people had made their way there, all seeking freedom under this clever new rule. That's 10,000 lives, totally changed, all because three men were brave enough to take that first step. So here's the main takeaway. This contraband decision was the first real major step toward emancipation that the U.S. government took. This wasn't some big proclamation coming down from the president in Washington. No, this was a policy born right there on the ground, forced into existence by the actions of Frank Baker, Shepard Mallory, and James Townsend. It basically laid all the groundwork for everything that came later, including the famous Emancipation Proclamation. In the end, the story of Freedom's Fortress really shows us that history isn't just shaped by generals and presidents. Sometimes a courageous choice made by just a few people can create a loophole that's big enough for thousands to run through, completely changing the rules for everyone.